Hey, I'm Gabe Groisman, and I'm excited to share some great news with you. From now on, the Standpoint podcast will be available on JNS, Jewish News Syndicate. You can see it on jns.org. You can see it on JNS's YouTube page, on all their platforms, through their newsletter. You've seen my partnership with JNS grow over the last several months with my column there. We've leaked some videos. We've released some videos there from the Kufi Summit. From now on, we'll officially be partnering with JNS. Make sure to follow, subscribe, like, and do all the great things you do to support podcasts like ours, and we'll see you on JNS. And we're back for another season of Standpoint. I'm so excited to be here with you again. As you could tell, we took the summer off, worked on another big project, writing a book over the summer. I'll tell you about it. It's called Before It's Too Late. It's an analysis of Jewish America today, the problems that are facing Jewish America, anti-Semitism, where it's coming from the political class, from universities, the issues within the Jewish community itself. Really a deep dive into the issue. Lots of people just talk about it on the surface. I thought it was important to do a survey almost of everything that's happening and then what we can do to confront it, yes, before it's too late. And that's the project I've been working on all summer. Can't do that and the podcast, so I thought it was time to do that and also get a nice refresh. Of course, in the middle of the summer, we did a special partnership with Christians United for Israel, Kufi, at their summit. Recorded lots of episodes there, shorter interviews. We put out some of them. Kufi is putting out the rest of them over the next couple months. With this season, we partnered with JNS, Jewish News Syndicate, jns.org. They'll be promoting and producing the podcast primarily. You can also find it on other platforms, but primarily will be at home at JNS. So make sure you follow there and subscribe. Been doing a column there for the last several months every week. You can register for my Substack, subscribe to my Substack to make sure you don't miss any of it. But what a summer it's been. It's 696 days still since October 7, 2023. The worst day, the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. And we still have 48 hostages remaining in the tunnels of Gaza. About 20 of them, according to Israeli intelligence officials, are believed to be alive. 696 days. I cannot believe we are here. I'm glad that there are still some that are alive, but to even think of the conditions they're in over the last several years, which is incredibly just jaw-dropping to even think of that span of time. But I've become friends with many of the hostage families, hostages that have come out, released hostages. And it's worse than you can imagine what these people are going through. There's still some of them there. We need this war to end now, but end with the total victory for Israel. Can't allow Hamas to continue. But Hamas is continuing, which is also pretty incredible. They're still somehow fighting in Gaza. There's not a lot of them left, but they're still there. We're seeing how difficult it is to wipe out Hamas, which was one of the goals of Israel set in the beginning of the war. It's still happening. Is it possible? That's a big question to ask. I was always a firm believer that it was possible to wipe them out entirely. No, you can't wipe out an ideology, but if you can take them out of government and have them stop attacking the democratic nation of Israel next door, that still hasn't happened. So that's why the fight is still going on. And the 20 or so hostages that are alive in Gaza, the other 28 or so, their bodies are being held by Hamas still over there. What else is happening this summer? Russia and Ukraine is still going at it. We've seen lots of efforts by President Trump to bring them together, to bring the war to an end. Seems more difficult than the president believed to be. The sides are really just their heels are dug in, and I'm not sure how that war is going to end. I hope it ends soon. It's too much killing happening on that side of the world as well, destabilizing for the entire region of Europe and also here in the United States. In the United States, since the summer, here's the bright news, I guess, the market is up. Market's been up over 5% since the beginning of the summer. Unemployment is at about 4%, which is great. Things are going well here in the United States overall, but the divide is stark. I mean, if you look at the approval numbers of President Trump, whatever they are, I think it's around 40% or so. But a really interesting number is it's about 98% of Republicans approve of the job he's doing and 1% of Democrats. So there you have it. That's the divide we have in our country. Anti-Semitism continues to explode in the U.S. and abroad. Right after we wrapped our last episode with Attorney General James Othmeyer from Florida, We had the Boulder firebombing, which was horrific in the beginning of June. And, anti-Semitism continues. And not just anti-Semitism, just violence happening in our country and around the world, but focusing first on our country. Last week, we saw a horrific school shooting in Minneapolis, a 23-year-old trans person, Robert Westman, who had changed his name in 2020 to Robin. He went to a church, to a school, while the kids were praying in pews in the morning, their morning mass, and he shot the place up. Killed 2 children, an 8-year-old boy, a 10-year-old girl. He injured 18 others, traumatized the rest of the school, the rest of the community, and honestly, the rest of the country for those of us paying attention. If you look at the video that he had put out, it was taken down about a day after by YouTube and others. This is a deranged person, anti-Trump, anti-Semitic, kind of anti the world. According to ABC News, Westman went to that church. That's where he went to school. His mother used to work at that school. He went back specifically there. In his notebook, sort of his last words, sort of, I'm blanking out on the word because these things kill me as the father of 5. Just thinking of kids at any school, but at a religious school in particular, praying in the morning and getting shut up. This guy drew out the church in his notepad. He was going after them. His words were just chilling. But the reaction to the shooting was so disappointing. It's just so telling where we are as a country. We're so divided, and it's more than just approval ratings. We're so divided on so many issues. Yes, we should be having discussions throughout the year, not just at the tail end of a shooting, about guns that are in the hands of criminals. How do we keep guns out of the hands of criminals? How do we keep guns out of the hands of those who are mentally ill? We should talk about school safety. We do it a lot in the Jewish community. If you go to my kids' schools, they go to 3 different schools. You'll encounter basically an army, a military force outside, private. Men with AR-15s, handguns, bulletproof vests around the school, in the school, because we know the threats that are out there on our community, but it's no longer just against the Jewish community. It's against the religious communities. It's against so many traditional communities in this country. We saw that at this Catholic school in Minneapolis. We can have that discussion. We should throughout the year. We should talk about the mental health pandemic that we have in our country. We should do a special episode on mental health pandemic. Just a side note on that, because it's really horrific. We should debate gun control. We should debate gun control laws. Do they work? Do they not? We should have a special episode on that as well. At least one. Let's go through the cities where there's high, strict gun control and look at the results. Is it working? What would work if that doesn't work? We can have these discussions. Full stop. But why the hell are people on the left in particular taking the moment after a school shooting at a Catholic church to attack prayer? Literally to attack people who believe in God, to attack the belief in God itself here in America. We still have "In God We Trust" printed on our currency. We still in our Pledge of Allegiance say "one nation under God" for the places where they say the Pledge of Allegiance. Meanwhile, we have people on the left, and not just in politics, but in the media. Every time something like this happens, and people of faith, of course, extend their thoughts and prayers, I do as well. And when I say my morning prayers, I have my morning prayer stuff right here to the right of me in the podcast studio. I try to be sure to pray for those people. Whenever I say something's happening, I want to pray for those people. I want to pray to give them strength, and for those who pass, for their souls to be elevated. This is America, the land of religious freedom. We have the freedom of religion, not the freedom from religion. Meanwhile, we have the governor of California, Newsom, kind of joking about how prayer doesn't work in response to the White House press secretary pushing back on Jen Psaki's saying prayer is not enough. And Newsom says these children were literally praying as they got shot at, as if to make some point that the left is trying to make, that prayer doesn't work. No one is arguing that we should only pray. It's a straw man argument. No one is arguing that thoughts and prayers are instead of any sort of action. Nobody is making that argument. Let's call it what it is. It's an attack on prayer, on the institution of religion, it's an attack on Judeo-Christian values in our country by the left. It happens every day. Incredibly, it seems that this shooter in Minneapolis had similar views. So you mix those views with mental illness and look what you get. So my message is to stop attacking people of faith. Those of you on the left, you're supposed to be the most welcoming, liberal, progressive. So you agree, everyone's welcome, big tent, unless you believe in God. That's not acceptable. But look, our problems are not just here in the United States. We have to look around the world. So many times here in the U.S., we believe that we are the center of the world. And in a way, the U.S. is in so many different things. But you have to look around the world, and we're seeing so many of the same issues, and we can learn from them. We can learn from what's happening across the pond, across the Atlantic in Europe, for example. We can learn from what's happening in Australia. We can learn from what's happening in South America, what works and what doesn't work. Today, we're going to focus on Australia. We're welcomed for our first episode by Erin Molan. Erin is Australia's most recognizable media personality, or one of them at least. She started out as a sports broadcaster. She went into national news. She started becoming a big defender of Western values, challenging the status quo in Australia. And then she's become somewhat of a star in the Jewish world. Why? Because she stood up against Hamas and continuously stands up against evil and stands with the state of Israel. No, she's not Jewish. We'll get into that. And just such an incredible first guest for this season, because this year we want to really focus on not just what's happening in the U.S. We want to take our drive around the world, or a flight around the world, and speak to people all over the world to understand what's happening in those places, how we could bring them back. Last season, some of our most interesting episodes, I think, were former Prime Minister Stephen Harper from Canada, understanding what's happening there. And obviously things didn't turn out the way he had suspected. People thought the Conservative Party was going to take it. That did not happen. So many interesting things. So today I'm excited to welcome Erin Molan for the official kickoff for season 2. We're episode 90-something at Standpoint with Gabe Groisman. Welcome. Erin Molan, thank you so much for joining me.
Gabe, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
By the way, thanks for coordinating this. For those who don't know, she's in Australia. I'm in Miami. Making this happen was not easy. Her team was awesome. My team was awesome on making this work. It's 7:30 in the morning here in Miami. I've got screaming kids waking up, trying to go to school. Oh. She's got kids trying to go to sleep, but we'll make it happen. So I really appreciate your time, Erin. Everything you're doing is amazing. And just seeing how you're so flexible to make these things happen, I'm not surprised, because that's the kind of person you are, at least publicly. So thanks again.
Bless you. It's such a pleasure. And isn't it bizarre how old I'm getting, that now 9:30 p.m. for me is like midnight, whereas I used to be kind of cool. Not anymore. But you're worth staying up for.
I was in Puerto Rico this weekend. We went to the Bad Bunny concert with my wife. That's the coolest thing I've done in a long time. But I had to take a nap before going. So.
You got to leave out the second part of that story.
No, I won't. That's just me. All right, so let's jump into it. I want to be respectful of your time. This last week, some news broke in Australia that I've been following, which was that the IRGC, the Iranians, orchestrated 2 of the terror attacks that we saw, one at a Jewish synagogue and one at a kosher restaurant, both last year. Now, what do you know about that first, before we jump into the why and how?
I mean, if anyone's surprised, then they haven't been paying attention, is how I would start. The Iranian regime, they're terrorists. You know, they inflict more harm upon the world almost than anyone else. The fact we even legitimized that terrorist regime by having an ambassador here in this country is a debate for another day, and I understand why. I get it, but I also think, why do we give them any legitimacy at all? I think the entire thing is embarrassing. I think it's farcical. I don't think this move by the Australian government off the back of this information, which is to expel the ambassador from the Islamic regime in Iran, makes up in any way for their appalling actions or lack thereof since October 7. It doesn't shift the dial for me in any way, shape or form. But yes, 2 incidents with evidence that they've been involved in, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if it's much deeper than that.
What's interesting that jumps to mind is here in the United States, I always look abroad in foreign policy issues in other countries to see what we can learn from it, what we can pull from there. And
Oh,
if you
don't
go
look
back,
to us now.
well, we can look at what not to do, frankly, because when you look
Yeah.
at the JCPOA that Obama entered into, pushed the United States into, the whole premise of it was that they really just wanted to be a member of the family of nations. And here they were in Australia as a member of the family of nations, quote unquote, even though Australia is one of the Five Eyes. You're not supposed to touch one of the Five Eyes, but they were welcome there. They had diplomatic relations with Australia, and still coordinated terror attacks on the ground. I mean, it's really tremendous. It doesn't work, right? The logic that the government, the Albanese and the government, and many in the West are trying to push forward, it doesn't work. It's not. They're not looking to be a part of the party.
No, it's embarrassing, and I think you're right. You know, you think anyone else, you've got to be open to, okay, let's try and work together, and let's do this and let's do that. And I look at, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and I think they are the greatest threat to the West in its entirety at the moment. And it's an issue and a country I've been incredibly focused on well prior to October 7. But when you look at terrorists and woke Western leaders like Albanese, like Keir Starmer, like Macron, like Carney, who in some way, shape or form think that they're going to find the good in evil terrorists, I mean, embarrassing is the word that comes to mind. They are evil. They are terrorists. It's their defining feature. It's not one part of them, and you can overlook it and try and go deeper to the other parts that might appeal. They are first and foremost evil, slaughterous terrorists, and trying to have any kind of legitimate relationship with them, well, clearly it doesn't work because they don't care. They will still bomb your synagogues. They will still cause terror in your countries, despite what you do that is weak, despite when you try and accommodate them. It makes no difference to them. They don't respect gestures of goodwill at all.
Yeah, in researching for this podcast, I was looking up at Albanese's long history, actually, as an activist for the Palestinian cause, quote unquote, whatever the hell that means.
Yeah.
But really, we shouldn't really be surprised for those who followed him. He's gotten older, some more gray hair, and maybe he speaks more properly now than he did before when you look at the old videos. But he's been at this for a while, and they're really doubling down now. All the leaders that you just mentioned have announced that in September, probably at the United Nations, they're going to, quote, recognize a Palestinian state. I wrote a column about that a couple weeks ago, sort of the ridiculous nature of it as a way to reward the Palestinians, seemingly for the October 7th attack, for the large support, the majority of Palestinians support that terror attack, and the Palestinian Authority just sitting quiet and doing nothing about it one way or another.
Except
what do you think?
Paying the families. They're not quiet about that. They'll pay the families of the terrorists who have died in that noble pursuit of killing innocents.
Who are they playing to? Who's Albanese? Let's focus on Australia. Who's he playing to in trying to recognize this, quote, Palestinian state? We know it doesn't mean anything. It's easy to.
The whole thing is utterly ridiculous. Who's he playing to? Who's he trying to impress? Who is he trying to get on side? Well, you referenced old pictures of him when he was at university in pro-Palestinian. Again, what does that even mean? Pro-Palestinian marches, waving the flag, chanting. So it's deep within him. The left of his party, he is trying to appease. Absolutely. There are extremists in there who are one-eyed on this issue. The Islamic population here in Australia, absolutely. When you look at certain seats in the country that you need to win government, there are significant Muslim populations in certain seats that the government needs to win. We were heading into an election, domestic politics completely at play. But, this is what's so diabolical about this entire situation. Put aside the fact that you're rewarding terrorists who slaughtered over 1,000 people and still have hostages. Well, Israel is not in Gaza for revenge. There are still hostages and Hamas still has capability to kill. Put all that aside. When you try to play both sides, and Albanese's tried much harder on one side, absolutely, instead of having both kind of be okay with you, they both hate him. What I find almost entertaining, if it wasn't so serious an issue, is that those who are leading the marches, those who lead the march over the Harbour Bridge, who are waving the flags of ISIS and Hamas and the Taliban and those holding up signs of the leader in Iran, they hate him as passionately as maybe other people on the other side do. And they feel as failed and let down by him as the Jewish community. So you look at, different leaders around the world. Millet came out and said, and I think this was a translation, so forgive me if it's not completely accurate, something to the effect of, when you leave politics, most people won't like you, so you might as well do what is right. This whole playing both sides, it reminds me of Kamala during the election campaign and running different ads to target, states where there was a more significant Jewish population or a more conservative population, and in states where it was more left and more democratic and there was a higher Muslim population. She ran 2 different ads to try and play both sides. It never works. People aren't stupid. Even the useful idiots, have an ability to comprehend basics. And that's the thing I find here in Australia, is that they're trying desperately to keep everyone kind of okay. And in doing so, they've put everyone offside. It's not hard. We elect you to do what is right. Do what is right.
For those of us who focus a lot on anti-Semitism, you touched on the Jewish community. It's almost a little bit over 100,000 Jews, I think, in Australia. It's a small percentage, less than 1%, about 0.5% of the population in Australia. But the anti-Semitism there is horrid. I mean, if you watch the videos that are coming out of Australia, it's almost another level. It's more akin to what you're seeing in Belgium and France and Denmark than what you see in the U.S. And it's really of a scary kind. You have a lot of radical Islamists. It seems like they're mixed with the progressive left, which is the perfect formula for the explosion of anti-Semitism. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what we're seeing in anti-Semitism in Australia and how the Australian people see that.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it? And you think about any other minority, less than 1%, in any other place in the world, and the progressives would be clamoring to support them, would be falling over to stand staunchly alongside any community that is being targeted or is being oppressed purely for who they are or what God they pray to. Not here, though. We have feminists in this country who purport to be feminists who would try and get a bloke cancelled at work because he complimented a woman's outfit because that's sexist. But they will march alongside those waving Hamas flags, denying the atrocities on women on October 7. It is insanity. I look at Australia and I look at the Opera House 2 days after October 7 as this defining moment for this nation that set the tone for everything that has followed, that has been shameful in this country. And I look at a relatively small group standing outside celebrating October 7 in front of our most famous, alongside the Harbour Bridge landmark, the Opera House. Those images went around the world. They didn't just celebrate. It was hate speech. It was calls to violence, and it targeted the Jewish community. It was vile. Did any one of those who broke the law — hate speech is illegal in this country. It's not free speech. It's hate speech. They were threatening and they were using hate speech. Pay a price, go to prison, pay any kind of price for breaking the law. No. Did our country come out in masses and say, not on our watch? Did our leader come out and, apart from, saying the things that would be expected and not actually meaning them and then not backing it up with any action, say, I set the tone in this country for what we accept. I determine as leader, because the leader in any country, organization, workplace determines the culture. It's set from here down. Did he come out and say, not on my watch, not here, not now, not again, no way? No. We failed miserably as a country to protect a minority group who has contributed significantly to Australia. We failed. And from that point on, all of those who have hate in their heart, all of those who are looking for a cause, who have no substance to them, those who are malicious, those who are anti-Semitic, those who subscribe to that ideology, they went, well, there you go. It's a free pass. We've got nothing to fear. Why would we not? Why would we not elevate this or escalate this? No one was punished. I'm not worried about consequences because they didn't suffer any, and look what they did. So then we saw this just continuation of horrific incident after incident after incident. And I live in an area that has a fairly high Jewish population here. And the impact on them has been awful. And that's putting it politely.
Yeah, and this week, it's interesting. This week, this will air this week. So while this airs, there'll be an anti-Semitism conference put together by an organization called CAM, Combat Anti-Semitism Movement. I think there's 90 councils will be present, of mayors from all over Australia. And what's incredible isn't that this conference is happening. These conferences are happening everywhere, trying to educate elected officials on anti-Semitism. But what's been incredible is in the last several weeks, this organized effort. There's been events to boycott the conference. They're to boycott an anti-Semitism conference. I mean, just well-attended, people from the parliament. I don't know if you've seen any of it.
I mean, I would compare it, and it reminds me of commentary that I made last week on Donald Trump's crackdown on crime in Washington, and you have Democrats protesting against the crackdown on crime, like calling for an end to the crackdown on crime. Make that make sense. It's the same thing, calling to boycott a conference, an event, an activity that aims to help minimize or stop or lessen the impact of anti-Semitism is insane. Yet it doesn't surprise me at all. And I look at Australia and this, it's a minority. I promise you it's a minority. But my gosh, they sound loud. They sound loud. And even at times with me, and I'm well hardened in this space, I'm battle hardened. It doesn't even hit the sides, and they come for me every single day. And I try and say to people, they do not represent the mainstream. Yes, they feel loud, but loud doesn't mean big, strong, or the majority in any way. But what I would say to people who are involved in these events, and what I would say to people who are being targeted by these scumbags, and they are absolutely scumbags. Again, that's being polite. They only win if you are scared and you pull back and you pull out and you cancel. They have no power unless you give it to them. So ignore them. They are lowlifes. You know what? Don't capitulate because of that pressure, because it is not real.
Yeah, absolutely. And you remind me, my wife's going to laugh at me for saying this, but Denzel Washington, one of my favorite actors. Yes.
I loved that clip recently.
Oh, you saw the clip. He says, you can't cancel me if I never signed up, right?
And that was, even I was on the front cover of the biggest magazine in the country about 3 weeks ago. And they came. And when I say they, it was, a handful of fake feminists who are unhinged and make no sense whatsoever. I could not care less. But, it was taken down for a little while because it was and I'm going, what? Don't subscribe. Ignore them completely. They are, they're unhinged. And I don't, I'm happy for people to disagree. I'm happy for there to be debate and discussion. But I've never, ever called for anyone to be cancelled, ever. And I just feel like if that is what you're attempting to do, then you are afraid of something. If you want them gone, it means you fear something in them that could hurt you. And it's not, it's not about protecting people. It's generally because they have the ability to expose your BS and not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually had to research something, which we'll end on this topic, which was, I was like, is Erin Molan Jewish? I mean, the amount that she's standing up for Israel and the Jewish people since October 7th. And it turns out, no, you're Catholic. And by the way, we started the show today, you didn't hear the monologue, but talking about the shooting in the Catholic school in Minneapolis and how horrific it was. And also, by the way, how the response on the left here, we're open to have any debate on any issue, but their response was to attack prayer itself, which was just maddening, something that I really focused on this week. And I'm writing about it later this week as well. But, after October 7th, you've really become this voice of reason for the West. So alongside those like Douglas Murray and others, were just standing up for Israel, for the Jewish people, for Western values. Your journey is so interesting, from sports broadcaster to national news and now to this defender of Western values and the Jewish people. To be honest, how did you land where you are now? Did you sort of have a moment where you said, shit, I got to do this. I have to stand up and start talking about this, or was it just a natural reaction?
I think it was very much initially a natural reaction. If you told me 18, we're coming up to 2 years, aren't we? 2 years ago, that October 7 would occur, that I would come out very strongly on my once a week show on Sky News and I would condemn the terrorism and I would stand staunchly with the victims of that terrorism. And if you'd said to me 2 years ago, that will be considered very controversial and there will be significant backlash. You will have to give your daughter to her father for a period of time because the death threats against her and you will be so specific and so legitimate that you will be forced to do that. I would have said you were dreaming. No way. Not in this, not even in this country, not in this world. There is no way, not in the West, no way. Yet here we are. But you know what I did that first week when I went on air, and I was very strong in my response to it, as I would be. I hosted an opinion show. It was my job to give my opinion. That week was one of the most difficult of my life, but I went back on my show the next Friday and I went harder. And I think for me, looking at the reaction demonstrated to me more than anything else why this mattered more than almost anything else, why the threat that exists for the people of Israel with these scumbag, evil, terrorists, murderers, slaughterers on their doorstep, why that threat and evil, the ideology behind it is already in my country and it already threatens my daughter. And I watch when they drive cars into crowds of people, as have been done this year, they're not checking whether you are Catholic, whether you are Jewish, whether you are Muslim, whether you are Hindu. They're not checking. They want to destroy everything that I care deeply about, everything that my dad was willing to give his life for as a major general in the army here, as a senator, someone who has served his nation his entire life. And we lost him a couple of years ago. And I tell you what, he was a staunch ally of Israel. I didn't understand to what extent till well after I started speaking out. But he was incredible. And people have told me this. And I remember before October 7, I would think, oh, that's, people would come up to me in the street after he died and they'd say, oh, we're so sorry for your loss. Your dad was an incredible ally of our Jewish community here in Australia. And I would, smile and give them a hug and say thank you. And I'd walk away and I would honestly think, it's really strange to me. Why would you need allies? I understood the Holocaust, but now in modern day, I thought, why would you need allies? Now I understand exactly what they meant. And I remember learning about the Holocaust. I remember not only being completely distraught at what had occurred, but I was unable, even as a young person in primary school, to comprehend how people could have sat by and not stood up and not tried to help. I think that was the one takeout for me that I found really hard to comprehend. And it's not that I thought back then, I wonder, I didn't think for a second I'd ever be tested in this way, but I'm not capable of not doing what I believe in and what I feel is right, because I have to go to bed with myself every night and be okay with who I am and who I've fought for and what I stand for. And I can assure you, despite everything and anything that's occurred since October 7 and since I've taken this very public stance, I don't always sleep well, but I go to bed every single night without any doubt in my mind that I am on the right side of history. And it is a pleasure and a privilege to stand with you and your people. And I will do so for the rest of my life.
Erin, thank you so much. Thank you for those words. If you tie together what you said now with what you said earlier of the images in front of the Opera House, where it's a small minority of people chanting in support of terror, and they're just a minority, you said, but there a chorus of people standing up against them? The answer was no, but there you are. Please. Crucial
point. And I make this point and I think it often, it's not about having a group of evil people. Every society in the world has that. Every society. It was the silence of my fellow Australians who disagreed with them that scared me. That scared me more.
Well, Erin, there's a chorus of people standing beside you, not just from the Jewish community, but from people that value Western values all over the world, standing with the Catholic community from the attack last week in Minneapolis, and all the attacks on the West that are happening. So thank you so much. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for your time away from your family to share your voice with us tonight. And thanks everyone for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow, and do all the great things you do to support podcasts. And see you next week.
You're amazing. Thank you so much for having me.